This episode is brought to you by ARX. You want to be a successful strength training studio owner. The problem is you aren't able to deliver the safest, most efficient and effective workouts, making it harder for you to attract and retain clients, which makes you feel frustrated. I understand that it can be difficult to differentiate your business without the right tools. ARX's breakthrough adaptive resistance technology uses patented motorized resistance and computer software to give you and your clients the perfect workout every single time. BioFit founder John Zarbok says that ARX is clearly the superior tool to deliver the exercise stimulus. My clients are seeing insane improvements in weeks, not months. I could not fathom running my business without ARX. So here's how you get started. Number one, go to arxfit.com/HOB to get $500 off your ARX machines. Number two, book a call with the ARX sales team. And number three, learn how ARX can help you grow your strength training business. Go to arxfit.com/HOB so you can stop struggling to attract and retain clients and start to grow your strength training business with confidence. Lawrence Neal here, and welcome back to HighIntensityBusiness.com, the podcast where we discuss high-intensity strength training and provide you with the tools, the tactics, and strategies to grow your strength training business. This is episode 347, and the topic of this episode is an exploration of a research paper called The Role of Fitness Professionals in Public Health, a review of the literature. Today's guest is Luke Carlson. Luke actually brought this paper to my attention and suggested we have a discussion on the podcast about it. Luke is the CEO of Discover Strength, a strength training business located in Minnesota. Discover Strength own and operate strength training studios as well as the Discover Strength franchise. Luke, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks for having me as always, Lawrence.
You're welcome. Great to always speak to you again. And, you know, as we were saying before we got started, I think it makes sense to just kind of go through this paper in a logical sequence and pick out some of the salient points. But do you want to just open up the podcast to introduce the paper, how you came across it, and what it's kind of all about as an overview?
So the way I came across it is James Fisher actually shared it with us. So he came to the U.S. a couple weeks after REC. We record this now on December 23rd. Our resistance exercise conference was late October. He could not come and speak at that conference because of the travel ban that didn't lift until essentially a week after the conference. So we surprised our staff and had him fly over in November when we do a meeting each year where we close all of our locations at about 10:30 in the morning. And we kind of go back to basics and reteach all the basics on how to perform a repetition and how we want to provide the Discover Strength experience to a client. So we go deep on that from about 11:30 in the morning until, we wrap up about 8 in the evening. But toward the evening, we do some fun things together. And he surprised everybody and came and gave a lecture to us and then participated in all of our activities. And one of the journal articles that he walked through is a journal article that he says he shares with all of his students now. And it's this article. It's a 2017 paper, The Role of Fitness Professionals in Public Health, a review of the literature. And my goodness, we love learning about muscle strength and muscle hypertrophy. And, those are the topics that you'll normally have a guest talk about on your show. Those are the articles we normally read about when we go to a conference like Resistance Exercise Conference. That's what people are talking about. But this is a topic that probably doesn't receive enough attention, and I think we're all really interested in it. So my staff was all on the edge of their seats listening to James talk about, hey, what is our role in this whole healthcare continuum? If we look at ourselves as part of the healthcare continuum, what kind of impact do we have? And is there any research that really delineates the effectiveness of the work that we're doing? And then in terms of future direction, where should we go in all of this? How can our position as the fitness professional, how can it be elevated in this continuum? And I think maybe a great starting point is every one of your listeners intuitively understands that what we do is really important. We've heard like Doug McGuff say, hey, I'm an emergency room physician. He told my staff this in the same meeting the year before. He said, I'm an emergency room physician. But let me tell you, I've saved more lives in the work that I do in my one small training studio than I have in my emergency room practice. And I just got done reading the book Upstream by one of the Heath brothers. I don't know if it's Chip or Dan Heath. They sometimes write books together and sometimes they write them separately. And the concept of upstream is, well, you could save somebody in the emergency room, or you could work upstream and you could say, well, what's putting them in the emergency room in the first place? And of course, the fitness professional is largely doing upstream work. And I think this paper attempts to quantify how effective are we in that pursuit, and then what should we be looking at next in terms of further research to understand our effectiveness, and how do we be a larger, more significant part of this healthcare continuum. So that's how I got introduced to the paper. That's kind of the premise of the paper.
Okay. And I think, as I said, we'll go through in a logical order. I won't just go straight to conclusions. But yeah, I mean, just to tap on what you said there, the paper kind of kicks off saying, you know, there's a consensus that regular, appropriate physical activity is really important for health and well-being, but there's less consensus about the actual effective solutions. And feel free to interrupt me at any point during this little bit here, Luke, and obviously encourage the listeners to actually go read the paper as well. And it'll be linked up in the show notes in episode 347. But there's a really great quote here, which is from a paper by, is that Oprescu, McKean, and Burkett? I could be butchering that, 2012. Argued that fitness professionals could be a key resource in the war against obesity and inactive lifestyles. And then it says here, we must begin to merge the fitness industry with the healthcare industry if we are going to improve world health. With a wealth of evidence in hand, it is time for organized medicine to join with fitness professionals to ensure that patients around the world take their exercise pill. There's no better way to improve health and longevity. So it's this lack. One of the issues, I guess, it's that the paper first starts looking at is this lack of collaboration between the fitness professional and the researcher and wider medical community. So do you want to just start there and just give your kind of thoughts on that?
Well, you just read one of the most important quotes in the paper, and that quote comes from Robert Salas. I'm going to probably butcher that as well, but he's the former president of the ACSM. So that is a significant figure saying that. I highlighted that. It's early on in the paper. It is such an important statement, and it's so incredibly true. So I got to go through one part of that quote again. With a wealth of evidence in hand, it's time for organized medicine to join with fitness professionals to ensure the patients around the world take their exercise pill. There's no better way to improve health and longevity. If that isn't like part of the core purpose of everyone listening to this podcast, I mean, if that doesn't get you going, if you don't say, I want to be a part of that, or if you don't say, well, yes, I am a part of that, how do we move that forward? You might not be alive, right? That's about as important as it gets and as exciting as it gets. I think we can maybe take the smallest step back, and I just want to read one statement from the abstract that really sets the stage for the whole paper. The purpose of this article is to provide an overview of the evidence on fitness professionals, their role in physical activity for health agendas, and the professional education and training that's available to support them. The analysis indicates that there's a mismatch between the expectations placed on fitness professionals and the training and professional education that's available to them. And so, as we walk through the different parts of the paper, we'll get into that. But the paper definitely sets the stage early on that we need to join the medical community, and together that's how we combat things like inactivity and obesity. And I don't even like focusing just on inactivity and obesity. I would just say the chronic diseases that are associated with not engaging in meaningful exercise. I think that's a more powerful, more specific statement than just saying obesity or being inactive, because I think we're trying to do more than just actually get people to become active.
Yeah.
So I kind of have a few notes here, and one of my first notes, Lawrence, was there's interest and support in this. So we have someone like the former president of the ACSM saying, yeah, this is incredibly important, right? We know that the World Health Organization says physical activity is the fourth leading cause of death worldwide. We have a massive industry that continues to grow, and we have more fitness professionals employed than ever. But then I think the next important part of all that is, although we're a large industry and more fitness professionals continue to enter the industry, we don't really understand what kind of difference a fitness professional actually makes. And then I think maybe most important, and what we should get much more granular in this, is that the public health community and the medical community, they don't know what we do. I mean, this is a theme in this paper and other papers, is the average physician doesn't know what are the qualifications of a personal trainer, a fitness professional. What does a fitness professional actually do? And then what are the impacts of whatever that fitness professional is doing? And so, my goodness, at every other point in the healthcare continuum, we understand the role of the nurse. We understand the role of the physician. We even understand largely the role of the physical therapist, the nurse practitioner, the physician's assistant. This is terminology that we use in the U.S. And I know some of the terminology is just a little bit different for the rest of your very international audience. But that's fascinating that we're a growing huge component. We're the largest part of the upstream thinking, the preventative thinking, and our medical professionals really question, what do we actually do, and is there any value there?
Do you think the public perception is similar to the medical professional view in terms of, like, you know, a lot of the public might think, you know, you might help with getting into shape or better body composition or lose some weight, build some muscle, but they don't always correlate those outcomes with actual real world health benefits, right? And there's that potential parallel there with, you know, maybe the medical community feel kind of the same way about, and obviously tapped onto that is probably the medical community's, like this paper explores, skepticism over the fitness professional's competency.
Yeah. So I think the medical community questions the competency much more than the general public does.
Yeah.
And the general public thinks, you know, anybody that's wearing workout gear and calls themselves a personal trainer and looks relatively fit, man, and they work out a lot themselves, they must be knowledgeable, and therefore they could probably transform my physique and my life. Or I think the medical, so I think the lay population thinks that fitness professionals are great for improving fitness. I don't necessarily think that they look at fitness professionals as key preventative intervention, upstream intervention for the chronic diseases that are so prevalent in every developed country. So I don't think they make that link. And then I definitely don't think our medical professionals look at a fitness professional as reliable, respected colleague that they could use as an ally in working with a patient and preventing disease and so forth. And this is not utopic to think that that's where we need to actually go. And there's a whole discussion on how we actually get there. And I hope we can get into that on this podcast today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you were touching on there about obviously how fit pros or fitness professionals looking good, not necessarily a sign of knowledge, and we'll get into that as well. I just want to make sure we've tied a neat bow on the opening here. I think the final point I just had here about just on the opening of the paper is just the lack of research on effectiveness of fitness professionals and how that's measured, and to actually really understand again the type of impact that fitness professionals are having on the general public is one of the other issues. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Lawrence. That last point is a key part of the paper, right? The authors of this paper are saying, before we just start, constantly, driving this message of getting people more physically active and using fitness professionals to do that, we probably have to know a little bit more about what's the research say about the work that fitness professionals do. Is it actually working? Is it moving forward health agendas? I mean, that's what we're talking about. When we say health agendas, we don't just mean public health professionals. I mean, there's the medical community, there's public health professionals, and then there's policymakers as a whole, right? Does the fitness professional actually move forward these important health agendas? And then the paper says, well, what's the nature of the professional education and training that's available to them. And so that's kind of the first part of the paper. One of the key parts of the paper is, if you look at least in this country, if you look at the development of exercise science or kinesiology professionals, there's generally two academic tracks, and it morphs into two professional tracks. One is education, so this is becoming a teacher essentially, and then one is becoming a fitness professional. And what they're saying is there's a heck of a lot more research and a heck of a lot more focus on the ongoing development of an elementary school through high school physical education teacher with this kinesiology background than there is the fitness professional. We've spent so much time understanding how to develop our teachers and how to make sure that they're continually learning and understanding how does having physical activity and, PHYED classes, physical education classes, gym classes, at least in the US, how does that impact health outcomes later in life? And we just have very little understanding or very little research on how that, the impact of that on fitness professionals. It seems to be that when a fitness professional graduates from maybe an undergraduate program in kinesiology, it's like there is no structure after that. There is no expectation to continue to learn. And the paper makes a pretty compelling case for that.
Yeah. Do you think, is there a priority in as you said there, in physical education for schooling, because they're kind of putting the child's health and well-being above that of the general public?
Yeah, so I actually don't think so. I think it's just because there's bodies that have come together that are acting with the greater good of educators, right? There's teachers unions and there's professional societies that have been developed that are just focused on how do we support the teacher and develop the teacher. And the idea of physical education teacher, that has existed so much longer than the idea of a personal trainer or a fitness professional. I mean, the concept of a fitness professional is really a new construct. So what we're talking about here is a very new era. I mean, you have listeners right now that are listening that are, in their mid 40s or 50s that have been doing this for a long time. But when they got started, people thought, what the heck are you doing, right? Their family members definitely thought, what the heck are you doing?
I hear that all the time on the podcast when people are starting.
The idea that you could make a living helping other people be fit, this prevention focus as your intervention is just very, very new.
The exact words are normally not. No one knew there wasn't even such a thing as a personal trainer when I started. That's usually how it goes. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, I hear that all the time, and I hear the colleagues that you and I know so well that you just delivered personal training without even charging for it because you just knew that's what someone needed. They were a member of your gym or your club, and so you just grabbed them and you walked to the first Nautilus machine and you taught them how to do it and you took them through it and you took them to failure, maybe a forced rep, and then you went to the next exercise and you just did that with as many members as you could, and you definitely didn't charge extra for it. And so we've really evolved. And I think maybe the first key take home when they look at the research around the role of the fitness professional is, oh my goodness, it works. Having a fitness professional works. So if you have a personal trainer, you're probably going to have greater improvements in your strength. You're probably going to exercise at a higher level of intensity. You're going to have greater adherence to whatever the exercise program is overall. If you're a personal trainer in a health club setting, you're working with a client, the work that you do is going to lead to greater improvements in body composition and a whole host of health-related measures. So we do have a pretty good body of research that says the work that the fitness professional does with the client in front of them is effective. And your audience may say, well, Luke, we already know that, but I don't think most of the world knows that. And I would actually say maybe most of your listenership doesn't necessarily know that. I love to pick on personal trainers, and it's not high intensity training personal trainers, but this is my summary statement. The most important controllable variable in the results you will see from exercise is this: did someone directly supervise your exercise? And so, okay, so that's the most important controllable variable. And people say, what's the most important variable? Well, it's your genetic predisposition, right? So did you pick your parents wisely? But the most important controllable is, did someone watch you work out? And there's so much research that says if you have supervision while you strength train, you're going to produce better results. Well, that better results is a 21-year-old college athlete or a 62-year-old type 2 diabetic. It's muscle strength measured by 1 repetition max in the bench press, 1 repetition max in the squat, rate of force development measured by something like a vertical jump, your 40-yard dash, but also the reduction in your abdominal circumference, some of the key indices around type 2 diabetes. So we know that in essentially every study ever conducted, there's a dose-response relationship on the role of supervision and fitness outcomes. And dose-response relationship means if I watch 10 people strength train in a room, they're going to get better results than if they just lifted by themselves. But if I walked in that room and said 7 of you leave, I'm just going to watch 3 of you and coach 3 of you, they're going to get even better results. Well, if I send 2 more out and I just one-on-one train someone, they're going to get even better results. So dose-response relationship. So the better supervision ratio we have, the better fitness improvements we see. Now, it's important to note that this is not people using high-intensity training methodologies. A lot of these methodologies, your listenership would say, yeah, that's a bad workout, right? Not a smart workout. So it's not because you're getting better results because you're given the 4th forced rep, or you're making sure the turnaround is eliminated all momentum and you hit a 10-10 pace exactly. I just picked 2 elements of exercise that your audience may or may not be interested in. Some of the strength training your audience would look at and say, that's not good strength training. So we know that supervision improves essentially all forms or applications of strength training. I think that is fascinating. So that's a good starting point for our fitness professional to understand that. But where I was going is the average personal trainer that I know, Lawrence, doesn't know that. And I know they don't know that because if I walk into a gym, I see them lifting weights by themselves. And I always say, hey, you're a personal trainer. Who's your trainer? And they'll say, well, bro, I'm a trainer. I say, I know. Who's your trainer? And they say, bro, I'm a trainer. And I'm saying, you saying that, you are illustrating that you don't know the very reason that your profession exists. It exists because when someone watches us train, we produce better results. And so, I've been a fan of this since 1999. I think since the year 2000, so in 21 years, I've probably strength trained by myself, I think 9 times. And that's because I was in Australia or Taiwan or China speaking for a little bit longer period of time, and I just didn't have someone to train me. But like in the last 2 months, I've got trained by so many of our different trainers. I've got trained by Liam and Jesse in Oakland when I was there. I've got trained everywhere in the last few months, because when I travel, I just know there's a personal trainer somewhere that I'm gonna work with, and that's an evidence-based approach, is to have someone take you through the workout. So the first takeaway from this paper is, well, my goodness, when you do work with a fitness professional, we produce better results.
And that's Liam and Jesse from Truth Not Trends. So we'll just link that up in the show notes as well. And they've got a studio in Oakland, San Francisco. Is that correct? Is that the right address?
It's called Pine Street Training, because in Oakland, on that side of the bay in San Francisco, you have Liam and Jesse, and you have Jack Bretnick, and you have Live Oak and Owen Dockham. And so there's just a plethora of great training options. And that's a pretty densely populated area, so they can all definitely make it work. But those are great facilities and great practitioners.
Let me just, so I will link all that in the show notes. But let me just ask some questions on what you just said related to personal trainers training by themselves. So do any of your trainers ever train by themselves? And if they did, would that be a serious problem? And I just want you to elaborate on that, because it's something I've been thinking about regarding our business and our trainers. And, should I be more strict about, we should all be trained by each other?
Yeah, we would never, ever, ever have a trainer train by themselves. I would say, in the tens of thousands, maybe it's hundreds of thousands, I don't know. I know it's tens of thousands of workouts that they've all gone through, our different trainers for the last 16 years. I'm sure there's probably 8 times where we have some people that are obsessed with their workout, and maybe they got back from a trip late at night and it was a Sunday night at 10 p.m. and they just needed to get a workout, and they knew the next day they were going into something else, or they had a trip coming up and they thought, I'm gonna get into the facility at 10 p.m. and I'm at least gonna go through 8 exercises by myself. I'm sure that that's happened. And I would say the time it probably happened the most is during the pandemic, like during our early shutdowns. Our trainers all had, of course, access to our studios, and they may go in at weird times and keep the lights off and get some semblance of a workout in. But on an ongoing basis, all of our trainers train twice a week with another trainer, and they always, in a weekly meeting with our manager, just comment on who have I been training with and how are my workouts going. So I wouldn't say it's never happened. Just like I said, in the last 21 years, I've done it 8 or 9 times for sure. But the vast majority of the time, they're training with somebody else.
Okay. And I guess just going back to the paper, kind of where we're at currently, if you're following this and actually reading the paper, is, if it's fair to say, Luke, we're at 4 key issues for consideration. Issue 1, evidence for health impacts. And Luke did a great job there of summarizing all of the benefits that we know are delivered when you are personally trained or supervised during exercise, which was great. That same section goes on to talk about funding, which is quite interesting. So it says, well, my summary of this section, I wrote here that there's a lack of funding for research into fitness professional effectiveness, possibly because it's private sector. And obviously, if the fitness industry were investing in the effectiveness of fitness professionals, it might come across kind of biased. And so that's one of the challenges, isn't it? The lack of funding, looking at this specific topic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. And then the final point I had on this was just that the fitness, it's at the end of this section, it says how the fitness industry has benefited by a lack of scrutiny, right? And that's why we do see, and this is something I want to come on to at the end of this, actually, which dovetails into this, and I don't want to spoil it. But you obviously get a lot of businesses out there that aren't using an evidence-based approach, that are using fads and all sorts of crazy and weird and wonderful approaches to training clients. And some of those are probably doing very well, right? I'd say the majority, I mean, Luke, you know the data better than me. The majority probably aren't doing that well if we're talking about profit or retention, but there's some that are. And it's due to this lack of scrutiny that it's like the Wild West in a way, right? Fitness has become.
And I got to say, it's more than a lack of an evidence-based approach. It's just a low barrier to entry as a whole. Yeah. This is the topic, in my opinion. I mean, this is the topic that nobody really wants to broach. Dr. Cedric Bryant essentially gave a presentation on it at REC this year, but he, I don't think, even entered the true danger and the controversy around it. Here's the controversy. You're not going to get the respect that we just talked about from medical professionals and the public health world and policymakers unless you change and basically increase or intensify the barriers to entry. But if you change the barriers to entry, it negatively impacts all of the club operators and even studio operators. So the reality is, if I own a huge health club and I hire all these personal trainers and have all these different group fitness classes and small group fitness classes and all these different things, I can't do those things unless all of my, every personal trainer I hire has a certain degree of credential. So, I mean, like even you, Lawrence, you're really good at what you do and really knowledgeable, you don't have the academic credentials to do what you're doing. And so basically, if we move in the direction that some of this paper talks about, so many of your listeners can't do the work that they do, and they are doing really important work. So it's I'm not talking about like it's a them, like it's some other group that's not us. It's literally us, that we wouldn't be able to do the work that we're doing. And so we have to decide, do we want that? So the perfect analogy is the nurse, right? So a nurse needs a license to practice in every country that I know of in the world. Well, you don't need a license to be a personal trainer in the US. You don't even need a certification. Most people have a certification, but you don't even need a certification. You can just call yourself a personal trainer. And my goodness, it's not hard to get a personal trainer certification. And that's very different than licensure. And so should we move toward licensure in fitness professionals? I don't know the entire international fitness scene, but I know like in Brazil, a fitness professional needs a license. So Brazil is light years ahead of the US and how seriously they take fitness as a profession. And that's the big question is, our health club operators are the ones that really employ fitness professionals. Do they really want to make it more stringent and thus make it harder to actually employ fitness professionals and make money off fitness professionals, so forth? So that is an important topic. And I think in order for us to get the widespread acceptance that we want, there's going to be some pain and some sacrifice in that process.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think maybe we can park that because I actually want to come back to that at the end. And that's related to neoliberal theory, right? Which talks about at the end of the paper. But moving on to the next section, if you don't mind, Luke, which is obviously issue 2, ambiguous role and practice expectations. I thought this was really interesting. And this is straight away the first paragraph. It's it makes me laugh because this is a mistake that so many, or this echoes the mistakes I think so many of our colleagues do, right? It's if I just read here, for example, evidence shows that personal trainers routinely take on a multitude of roles, including those of teacher, trainer, counselor, coach, supervisor, supporter, nutritionist, biomechanist, bodybuilding, evaluator, and consultant, life management advisor, weight controller, personal life consultant, business person, and physical fitness advocate. And this is really common in our space, right? People trying to be a jack of all trades, or as the article says, a jack or Jill of all trades. And that's a challenge, right? And we try and take on too many roles when really we should be more niche, and we'd likely be more competent if we were more focused.
Yeah, you just nailed it. That's the key point there. They go on to say, the evidence suggests that role boundaries can become particularly problematic in these contexts due to the factors that emerge within client-trainer interactions. For instance, some research has shown that personal trainers can develop deep and often intimate relationships with their clients, in turn serve to blur respective trainer-client role boundaries. So yeah, you're totally right. They're saying that the trainer is expected to know so much. Now, in this second issue, if it's okay, they also make a pivot and talk about how fit you are is often the determining factor on how you're viewed as a professional. So if I can go ahead and read another important line here.
Go for it.
An important issue that has emerged within the sociological literature is the conflation of a fitness professional's bodily appearance or bodily capital with their level of perceived professional competence or health authority. Okay. So everyone that's listening to your podcast has dealt with that, right? Clients tend to believe that if a fitness professional has a good body, then this signifies a high level of professional knowledge. But there is an obvious point to be made here that such personal bodily capital does not in itself translate into professional knowledge, the kind of detailed and personalized health, fitness, or lifestyle advice that clients are likely to require. Nonetheless, this image appears to be an important factor for clients when deciding whether or not to trust a fitness professional and follow the advice given, regardless of actual levels of knowledge and skill. So it sounds like we're completely taking a 180 on what we started off with is, hey, we need more education and certification and licensure to be respected. Oh, but by the way, clients don't really care. They're just looking for someone who's got a hot body, because if you have a hot body, you must know a lot about fitness. And we could talk about this all day, but every one of your listeners deals with this every day, every client that they work with. And I think Instagram has only exacerbated this, right? Like, there's just so many Instagram fitness celebrities, and that's I think it's an interesting paradox.
It's affirmed what I guess most of us already knew, and first impressions, unfortunately or fortunately, are really important. So even though it's not obviously a symbol of knowledge, we should all just tick that box and be in the best shape anyway, and walk the walk. Just taking one step back, you mentioned there about how personal trainers become therapists for people, which I thought was quite funny. Because you see that a lot, right? Especially in the smaller operations where it's like a one man or one woman business, where they have very, very intimate relationships with their clients. And obviously they have more perhaps laxity around time. So their sessions can draw out to like an hour and a half, where they just end up talking to the person about all of their personal problems. I hear this quite a lot. And obviously, again, we have to be very, very careful with that, because we're not trained therapists. I'm just curious, I love bringing this back to you and your business because as I said to you before we got recording, I think your business has done such a wonderful job of really addressing a lot of the challenges in this paper. And one example would be the expert educated trainer, right? All your trainers have 4-year degrees, which, it's shown that they have something like 30% more knowledge in this paper, at least, than someone who doesn't, right? So I think that's great. So I think you are really, just doing great work. But point I had is, how do you regulate your personal trainers becoming therapists? I mean, is it simply that the session's so short and efficient that there's no time for that? Or I'm just curious how you think about that.
Well, I think all of your listeners would say, yeah, when the session is 20 minutes or 30 minutes long, you can't get too much into the therapy session. And I think that's what happens a lot with hour-long sessions. But we also drill down all the time that you should be providing instruction and coaching and feedback and not talking about all the other factors that you could talk about. And we really, really push trainers, particularly our new trainers, to stop asking a client questions about their personal life. Like there's nothing that's like nails on a chalkboard to me more than someone leading a session with, hey, what's going on this weekend? What are you up to this weekend? Because like, that's not why they're there, right? Like they're there because they want to understand, hey, our first exercise is the seated calf. Last time you did 11 reps. Okay. Today we're going to match 11 if we improve. I only want to see improvement if your form is awesome. I know you're running 20 miles this weekend as you train for the marathon. So we're going to push hard at failure, but we're not going to overdo, right? It's got to be about the exercise. And so I think too often we focus on creating the personal relationship, and the personal relationship, there should be trust there, but that trust is rooted in professional trust. To care, this is how we say it, to care is to care about the workout, right? I would want any client that I'm working with to say, Luke is so caring, but it's not that I care about your dog, it's that I care about your workout, because that's what you're paying me to care about. So I can ask about your dog. If you tell me that your dog died, I mean, I should show some empathy, my goodness, but I got to care about your workout and got to make it about the workout as much as possible and not talk about all the things that I really actually don't have expertise around. And I think that's the big problem is we talk about so many things that we don't really have training on. I loved recently on your podcast, John Little did a wonderful job of talking about that. He said that clients will ask him about medical issues because he's a fitness professional, and he found himself reading up on them and understanding them. And like, there's something about people that they just ask about injuries. They ask personal trainers about injuries. And I just have met very few personal trainers that say, what, your injury? Why are you asking me about that? Like, I'm not a doctor. Go see a doctor. Go see a physical therapist. Now, I can make sure that we are working around the injury. And if you describe the injury, I understand whether or not we should perform the exercise or we should stay away from that body part and we should train the healthy limb, or if we should just reduce the range of motion. But I just don't think we have enough fitness professionals that even stay out of that. So John Little did a wonderful job on your podcast a couple episodes ago, talking about how easy it is for the trainer to get out of their scope of practice because the client's asking those questions.
This episode is brought to you by ARX. These are the most intense exercise machines I've ever used. I remember how fast a pull-down exercise took me to muscular failure and beyond. On the final negative or eccentric excursion, my tank was practically empty, but the adaptive resistance enabled me to continue to perform work until the predetermined end of the set. This experience was very profound and made me realize how effective ARX is in helping clients reach a high level of intensity in their workouts and ultimately produce the best results. I also love how ARX measures and tracks range of motion, rep cadence, total output and time, and more with real-time audio and visual feedback. These features are powerful sales and retention tools to help you convert and keep more clients. As a listener of the High Intensity Business podcast, ARX is offering you $500 off your machines. Just go to arxfit.com/HIB to book a call with the ARX sales team to learn how ARX can revolutionize and grow your fitness business. Again, go to arxfit.com/HIB, and now back to the episode. Really well said. I love that, Luke. Awesome. Okay. So moving on to next section here, issue 3, concerns about training and education provision. This is similar to what we were just talking there about jack of all trades. It's the complexity. I wrote here as a summary statement, the complexity in clients, in the different client niches. You know, if a client has obesity or Parkinson's disease or some other health related condition or some other sort of special need, it's quite challenging, I guess, for, you know, personal trainers to be skilled at dealing with all of these different types of issues. I suppose it is possible to upskill everyone to a level where they understand how they can, you know, map the training to that person. But the point is, it's the continuous development that goes into, and the background that goes into being able to do that.
Yeah, I think one of their key points here is, yes, even an educated fitness professional that gets a degree and maybe is an ACSM certified professional, they're going to test better when they're given, you know, a battery of tests on their fitness knowledge. And these people that have the degree and have a respected certification. And by the way, when I say respected, I mean nationally or internationally respected, like ACSM and NSCA. I think that a certification from like HIT Uni is much more valuable in teaching you how to actually train clients. But when we say certification here, we mean one of the major certifying bodies that these individuals are more likely to turn toward evidence than look at Instagram or look at what other fit people or whatever Tom Brady is recently saying. So I think all that's great. One of the key points of this paper is, because there's so much autonomy in personal trainers or fitness professionals, and think about it, there is. What you talk about, what you do, how you structure your services, how you program, there's so much autonomy there. There's little regulation. There's essentially no regulation. Think about the autonomy that a personal trainer has relative to a nurse, relative to a physician, relative to let's get outside of healthcare world, even an accountant. In accountant, there's GAAP, which is that determines how you actually do your work. Fitness professionals can do essentially anything they want. So the argument here is your ongoing development and your ongoing learning, it is going to be individualized. It's going to be largely ad hoc. And I don't know, Lawrence, whether that's good or bad. I think it's pretty exciting, but the reality is, if you're not really continuing to upskill yourself and learn in these diverse areas, you're probably not using an evidence-based approach. You're making it up as you go. You could argue, Lawrence, that your podcast listener, much of this is moot because your podcast listener is so focused on resistance training, and they are continually upskilling themselves on resistance training information, whereas the average fitness professional or personal trainer is trying to touch on literally everything from nutrition to strength training to cardiovascular exercise to flexibility to all the different recovery modalities. I know you and I are both fans of the book Good to Go, which looks at all the different recovery modalities that are out there. It's wonderfully researched and wonderfully written. And, you know, the average personal trainer is into all of that. There's just a lot that you have to know about if you really want to comment on all of these things. And what they're saying is, hey, there's no certification that covers it all. And so these trainers, they're finding their own educational opportunities, and it's very unstructured, and that probably contributes to the lack of credibility that the fitness professional has. Or even in medicine, there's always specialization, right? So whatever track you're going down, it's structured. You may have some autonomy in what path you want to go down, but once you go down a particular path, you're not making it up as you go in terms of how you're going to upskill yourself. Yes, there's times where you're going to say, I'm going to choose this course or that course. I just think we have more autonomy in fitness, and we need to be aware of the side effects of that, the negative consequences of that.
You know, there's a bit in the paper that says high levels of education are more likely to use fitness trainers with higher levels of education are more likely to use an evidence-based sources of information to inform their practice. Now, obviously at Discover Strength, you have a policy of educated experts. You know, all of your trainers have a 4-year degree in something related to exercise. Now, do you think that it's really important that we seek out trainers who have a degree? Obviously, I'm a little bit of an exception to that. Maybe, you know, I try and follow the evidence, and I don't have a degree, as you said, in exercise. So, yeah, I mean, do you think that we can create structure in our company that provides that training and tooling and help people become more evidence-based, if we don't try and, get people who already have that background?
Yeah, so I think there's kind of two ways to look at this. One, you can say if we ever want to receive the level of respect and want to be integrated into the healthcare kind of continuum, then we probably need the degree and the licensure, right? But we are not years, we are probably decades away from that actually happening. I don't know if it'll ever happen. So in that case, I think we need the degree and the licensure, and just a seismic shifting in how we're looking at our fitness professionals right now. However, the way we currently look at it, yeah, I think you could read the right stuff and take an evidence-based approach and really be on the right track. And I know that you have hundreds of listeners right now that are freaking out as they listen to this for the first time, saying, for God's sakes, there's people with degrees and with the good certifications. They're still not evidence-based and doing all the wrong things. So having the degree and having a good certification does not mean that you're not, committing malpractice as you work with a client. So yeah, would I rather have a client, a family member, a loved one work with someone with no formal education, no certification, that really uses kind of this evidence-based approach and trains like most of your listeners would train? Or would I rather have them see someone with an undergraduate degree, a master's degree, and an NSCA certification, and they're doing power cleans and plyometrics and bouncing on a BOSU ball while juggling at the same time? And that's more common than it's uncommon. So I do think we can create learning experiences and create a culture of learning where people are exposed to the right things and becoming experts. But Lawrence, that's probably just to serve our clients. I don't even know if that changes perception, right? We can't look at the medical community and say, oh, haven't you ever heard of Lawrence's podcast? Haven't you ever looked at Simon's new directory of high-intensity training practitioners? These are people that are doing good things. Now, they don't all have degrees, but they're really good people and they're using an evidence-based approach. That's not going to get us anywhere in terms of advancing this whole thing. But my goodness, in serving the clients in front of you, we can definitely advance how we serve a client and the value we bring to the client and the efficacy of the exercise that we're prescribing.
Yeah. Okay. No, great. Well said. Good point.
And by the way, we can feel good. We can feel good about the work that we're doing. So anyone that's listening to this, that doesn't have the 4-year degree that says, well, Luke, I've been doing this for 25 years and I'm doing great work. I 1000% agree with you. And you can keep doing good work and you can do better and better work and you can continue to upskill yourself by following the evidence. So I am a fan of that. This separate conversation that I'm alluding to is, if we want to change perception as a whole, we probably at some point as an industry have to bite the bullet and move toward this licensure piece, which is almost a separate topic.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And, I think just one last thing to say on this is I think it's important to have a structured learning program in your business for your teams. You really care about this and you really want to make sure that, that your trainers are competent and delivering great service. Then you need that, and obviously motivating the trainer. We've not even come on to that yet, which is the reason why you see a lot of fitness professionals leave the industry in a high turnover, is to have some kind of internal training program. Now you guys have, what do you call it, Discover Strength University or Growth Plan or something like that? Yeah,
Growth Plan is a part of Discover Strength University. Yep.
Yeah. So and I guess regular podcast listeners will be familiar with you talking about it on the show all the time, but it's just really important. Would you agree with that, to have a structured approach versus hey, new trainer, go and read all this stuff about exercise? Like, you need to have tracks for them to follow, right?
Yeah, that's why I'm not a fan of, hey, just get the CECs in so that you can keep your certification up to date, because you can get CECs and so many different things, and you're not moving toward a level of expertise in what we actually do. And what we actually do is strength training. It doesn't mean that you can't learn outside of just strength training, because we'll occasionally have someone get a CEC outside of exactly what they do. Like, I just took a course on nutrition strategies for marathons and marathoners and ultra marathoners. Well, that doesn't really apply to the work we do, but we have some clients that run marathons. We're not going to give them advice on that. I probably am just more selfishly interested, and so I took the course on it. But yeah, we want to create and curate learning experiences that move someone toward being expert in the work that we're actually doing, which of course is resistance training, and then understand the target market that we're working with, right? Mm-hmm. If you're listening to this podcast and you only work with 80-year-olds versus only working with 20-year-olds, the workout design might be similar, but the issues that you're going to run into and how to motivate that client and injuries that client has that you're going to have to program around are probably pretty different.
Yeah, yeah. And did you take that course just for yourself? The nutrition course?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Don't know how you have the time, Luke.
I mean, it was an online course, and it was.
So, okay, I just want to make sure we've covered all the main points here. I think we've covered everything on that issue. So, the fourth and final issue is lack of recognition and professional credibility. Now, you have already touched on this a little bit. We've talked about skepticism from the medical community and how that results in low rates of referral, which is really terrible, right? That's a huge problem. Like, we could be having so much more success in our businesses and helping transform people's lives if we increase that rate of referral. You're getting all excited. Go on. You've got a point to make on this.
This is the best topic, right? This is great. The issue is literally lack of recognition and professional credibility. So the first sentence, if it's okay if I read it, Lawrence.
So
I have a process when I read something, I highlight it if I think it's important. And then if I think it's really important, I put an asterisk next to it with a pen. And then if I think it's really, really important, I put 2 asterisks. So this is like highlighted and multiple asterisks. A significant barrier that the fitness sector as a whole faces is an understandable lack of recognition by key stakeholders in public health and education. Okay, full stop. Every one of your listeners should say, wow, this is important. This was highlighted in an industry report by the EHFA, which found that the established health professions held negative, established health professions like a doctor or a nurse, the established health professions held negative perceptions of the fitness industry and its ability to assure appropriate levels of education and training for its members. There's a degree of skepticism in the medical community in particular about the knowledge base and level of professionalism that underpins the industry. Full stop. That is absolutely fascinating. But remember, like, the follow-on to that is medical professionals have no education in exercise. So it's not like the medical professional should say, hey, you guys are just, you're a group of bandits that have you're self-taught and some of you, yes, you're muscular and that's great. And you probably know what you're doing. The rest of you, you're just making it up as you go. I can't trust you with my patients. Well, the reality is that physicians shouldn't be talking about exercise either, because there's not a medical school in this country that has any education on fitness, okay? And very little on nutrition, but definitely not on fitness. And this is a Harvard survey of young Harvard physicians. It was something like 90, I'm going to get really close in the percentages. 92% of young physicians coming out of Harvard Medical School said exercise is incredibly important for their patients. So our young physicians understand it's important, but it was something like 12% of them felt comfortable prescribing exercise to their patients because they basically said, I don't know anything about exercise, which of course that makes sense. They haven't been educated on exercise. So this is an opportunity, right? The medical professional is saying, I don't know anything about exercise, but I think it's probably really important. But they don't feel comfortable saying, go talk to a fitness professional. That, to me, that is the definition of an opportunity, right? I don't know anything about it. I know it's important. I wish I could turn to some other professional and have them take it from here, and they don't trust us. And you know whose fault that is? Our fault. We have and I can't say for hundreds of years because our profession's so new, for at least 50 years, we haven't showed up in a way where they should trust us. So, if anyone on this podcast is looking for a core purpose for their new company, this could be a great core purpose, right? To increase the professionalism or the professional, how the profession of personal training is viewed, or how the medical community views us, or changing the perception of fitness professionals as allied health professionals. I mean, this is part of the cause, right? This is about as important as it gets.
That's what you're trying to do as well, right? I mean, all of your new videos, they're amazing, by the way, for recruitment, are talking all about this stuff, all about how to make the personal trainer more respected and how to bridge that gap.
Yeah. So our core purpose, I mean, you didn't ask this question exactly, but our core purpose is to lead a movement in evidence-based exercise. So evidence-based exercise just means, hey, connect the scientific research to how someone works out. I remember being 20 years old and being in undergraduate class and, biomechanics or exercise physiology or something. And loving it, right? I'm loving learning about motor units and muscle fibers. But I was sitting in that class, Lawrence, and I realized we are not studying this in a vacuum. Like, we're not just studying this for the sake of studying this. If this doesn't trickle down and impact how a human actually works out, this is all for naught. And I knew at that time in the year 2000, no one was exercising in a way that was reflective of the scientific research. I said, if I could spend the rest of my professional life, like really, I think at the time I said, if I could spend my waking life trying to bridge the gap between what science continues to uncover and what humans are actually doing, that would be special. So when we say our core purpose, it's to lead a movement in evidence-based exercise. That's evidence-based exercise. Lead the movement means there's got to be a movement around it, which means we have to impact the academic exercise science world. That's why we talk to people and have friendships with people like James Fisher and James Steele and so forth. And we have them involved in REC, and we go to all the academic conferences and publish research ourselves. But it's also the health club world, right? That's why I'm involved in International Health Club Association and their board of directors. And I go to all the conferences and I'm into it, right? And it involves, of course, our clients and our colleagues and, REC and all of that. So there should be a movement there, and we want to be a part of leading that movement. But if we had, and we don't, if we had a second core purpose, that second core purpose would be to professionalize personal training. I am a firm, I know that the work of a personal trainer is about the most important work on earth if you really want to ward off chronic disease and change someone's life. And I think that needs to become more professional, because we treat the physical therapist, the nurse, the physician's assistant so incredibly professional, and we haven't with the fitness professional. And so I would love for that to be a part of my legacy selfishly. And I think most of your listeners say they would want to be a part of that as well. And I think that most of your listeners can benefit from that. And maybe your younger listeners are going to benefit from it more. There's so many the pioneers of our industry that listen to your show and have been on your show. And maybe I don't want to say it's too late for them. It's not too late for them to do great work. It's maybe too late for them to see this all shift. But for some of your younger listeners, we can definitely be a part of seeing all of this shift and change.
And on like a micro level, I thought I'd just take a quick moment to talk about how people can generate leads quickly. That's related to this, right? Is being proactive to build strategic partnerships with medical professionals, physicians, chiropractors, etc., and actually go out of your way to say, hey, and I'll just talk about this because I've actually been doing it myself lately, so it's fresh in my mind, and I'd love your thoughts, Luke, quickly on this. And that's just to reach out to these people directly and say, hey, I have clients who have, injuries or issues that, they've had for their entire life or for years, or maybe something that's happened to them outside of the facility, because obviously no one ever gets injured in our studios. And, I'm looking for someone to trust who I can refer these clients to. And, I'd love to build a relationship with you or something to that effect. Invite them in for a free workout, show them that you're evidence-based, show them the workout, show them they can trust you. And suddenly you've just given them an epiphany, because like you said, the vast majority just don't know anyone they can trust. And they just see probably exercise modalities that just are just visibly there's something wrong with it. Certainly if there's lots of, explosive movement. I just thought like that's a kind of a way we can really address this on a micro level as business owners now. What's your take on that? Have you got any thoughts you want to share on that? Yeah.
I totally agree. But I think the nuance there is, let's just pick the physician. I think the physician that's been into your facility, that's gone through a workout, that is now a client, or maybe they're not a client, but let's just assume they're a client. Most of their referrals that they refer to you are still going to be their friends and family who need a great workout, not their patients. Because there's no mechanism for them to get paid. There's no mechanism for them to understand what's the follow-up like. They're just not going to look at a patient and say, you should do supervised resistance training and here's where you should go. That's just not a part of their professional practice. And so that's why we have to change. That's the kind of separate topic that we're talking about, where that becomes a part of what they do is, hey, now I'm going to refer you to a physical therapist, or I'm going to prescribe this medicine, this pharmacological approach. Or now we're going to integrate a resistance training approach, and here's how I pass you off to that. I think you're going to get referrals from physicians, but I think it's going to be just their friends, right, and their family members.
What about physiotherapists? So more likely to get professional referrals?
Yeah, potentially. I think the physical therapist still doesn't have a professional, credible way to do it, right? When they look at their notes and their scripts of what do they recommend for the patient, if the note says, well, I sent them to a personal trainer with Lawrence, I think that physical therapist boss is going to say, what? Why aren't we doing that ourselves with them? Why aren't we capturing revenue on that? What's the follow-up on how that's going to go? This is not a conspiracy theory, but I just don't think that they have anything to gain from it, nor is it inside their kind of ecosystem. We got to get inside their ecosystem in order to be a part of that. So I think when they do make that referral, I think it's anecdotal. Just like for me, I make anecdotal referrals all the time. Like I am seeing a physical therapist, or I have for months, over a running injury. If I talk to a runner who's injured, I'm going to refer that person to that physical therapist, right? It's not really my scope of expertise, but I had good results with this physical therapist, and I like her, right? I get a running gait analysis, and I buy my shoes through a woman who is just brilliant. She's like Madonna or Cher. She just has one name. Her name's Wendy. And everyone knows who Wendy is. She's the shoe whisperer, where you come in and you have like a broken leg, and she has you run and puts a different shoe on you and touches you here and there and adjusts some things. And suddenly you walk out of there ready to win the Boston Marathon. And so I refer everyone that's injured to her because I've worked with her and I trust her, not because she's a part of our ecosystem, essentially. So I have a sister-in-law who's a primary care physician, and she is a brilliant doctor. She's a really good doctor. And she refers people to us, but she refers her friends to us, not her patients. Now, she has plenty of patients that are our clients, and they'll bring it up all the time. The patient will say, yep, I work out at Discover Strength. And she'll say, that's exactly what you should be doing. It's really smart. But she's not looking at a patient saying, you know what you need to do? You need to resistance train. Here's where you should do it.
That's fascinating. So everyone could just completely disregard my point there.
So I think they're doing it. They're just not necessarily doing it with their patients, particularly with a physician. Maybe you're going to see it more with a chiropractor.
You can really, you're really speaking from a place of scale as well, which is fascinating, right? Because obviously you're speaking from the experience that you've got with Discover Strength, that perhaps you're not getting as many referrals from professional referrals in that sense, and more from friends and family, as you said there. Just conscious of time, and obviously there's a few things we need to cover here. So moving on, it starts talking. Go ahead. Yeah.
I just want to make sure before you move out of this fourth key area.
Oh no, we're staying in there.
Got it. Good. Then you go ahead, because I think you know where you're going to go.
Well, I was just going to start talking about that one of the challenges in the fitness industry that's probably hurting, I guess the fitness. The business's ability to, provide that professional credibility and recognition is, the situation for the employee. Low pay. It talks about oversupply of fitness professionals with qualifications. So I'm guessing that's not degrees. That's like, unregulated qualifications, whatever. Lack of career progression, which we've already touched on. Lack of having. I guess that's slightly different actually, because there's a growth. There's a kind of a continuous learning, but there's also a growth plan, right? There's how can we create our own future, and in a prevalence of shift work. So these are real barriers as well to obviously this problem, this issue. So do you want to speak on that? Sorry.
Yeah. So here's the quotes that I thought were just really powerful. It has been argued that the widespread complacency within the fitness sector about career progression and job quality results in employers having little incentive to tackle problems of low wages or improve opportunities for training and development. So by the way, they mentioned that hey, we treat our physical educators in schools much better than we do our fitness professionals in this regard. Workforce turnover in the fitness professions is high as a result of low pay and oversupply of workers holding relevant health and fitness qualifications, and a lack of career progression, and the prevalence of shift work, like you said. Added to this, it has been noted that the continuing professional development courses that are provided in the fitness industry are often too short and compact, meaning the fitness professionals do not receive the level of training or education they require for the tasks they undertake in real world practice environments, which I think is fascinating, right? These courses are short and we have a lot coming at us. And then here's kind of the last statement that I think is important. Furthermore, with the focus on sales, growth, and customer service, both are wildly important in the fitness industry, it has been reported that employers are not sufficiently concerned when fitness instructors are more adept at smiling than they are at understanding knee ligaments, end quote. And so basically, much of our fitness industry says just have the fitness professional that can create a relationship and sell and provide good service. They don't actually have to know anything. And I got to tell you, smiling is wildly important and creating relationships is wildly important. I think you have to combine that with actually having the knowledge. And that statement sounds like just a shot at so much of the fitness industry. It's essentially a shot at the employers of the fitness industry, which is, I keep saying this, club owners, studio owners, they're just saying, as long as you can smile and you're friendly, then we're going to hire you. That's not enough. We need to combine that with professionalism. Now, by the way, do not just have the professionalism, because if you're not smiling, providing great customer service and selling, you're in trouble, right? We could go too far in the other direction, but this is the Jim Collins tyranny of the or. You don't have to say we're either smiling and friendly or we're truly credible experts. It can be and, right? Embrace the genius of the and. You can do both of those at the same time. And that's, of course, I think where we need to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, not to keep obviously being so complimentary of Discover Strength, which I probably do too much, but I think you tackle these issues perfectly. You pay trainers very, very well. They're very well compensated, and not just Discover Strength. Many of our colleagues in our niche in fitness do this. There is clear career progression, and you're very mindful about hours. You won't burn out the trainers, and you kind of provide a 40-hour work week and give them the option to do more. And so you address these barriers in your business model so well, and I think it's relatively easy to do, that we could all do, right, in order to help solve this issue.
Yeah, Lawrence, that was great. You started off giving me a great compliment, and I appreciate it. And then you followed up by saying, "But it's easy to do." So the compliment's not significant. But you're probably right.
It's not easy. It's not easy, but it's clear what we need to do.
It is probably easier than we realized. And if there was any type of compliments in there, I will take it. I mean, because it's something we're very interested and we're passionate about. But frankly, I think a lot of your listeners are passionate about it, and these are the steps that we need to make. And I think the barrier or the shift in thinking for so many of your listeners is, well, maybe they've done it for themselves, or maybe they haven't needed to do it for themselves because they're the entrepreneur. They own the studio. They've trained clients from 6 a.m. until 8 p.m. and, work the crazy schedules and taken clients on weekends. And, I know so many of your listeners so well, and this has been their story for 20 years. And they've done it all, but their employees and their trainers don't want to do all of that. And so the shift is, how do I start creating environments where people can do or move toward this? Maybe they're not going to move toward this, or they haven't started this way. But in order to grow this whole thing, we're going to need to create these environments for our people where we can pay them a little bit better, give them a little bit better working conditions, on and on and on and on, expect them to provide great service and sell, and really be experts in what they do. So, I think we're all just kind of on a journey in moving toward this. And I think you got to make sure that you don't let any head trash that, hey, I had to do all that and I made it, get in the way of, well, does my future employee really want to do that? And is that conducive to me hiring and retaining really great people? And I don't think it is, right? If you expect, I can insert name after name after name that listens to your podcast, and they're incredible at what they do, but they're not going to find someone like them that's going to work the level that they have worked. And so, create a structure and create an employment opportunity for people that would attract the current workforce is what we have to do. And we can't get caught up in the head trash of, well, that's not how I grew up in this industry.
Interesting. So you think that a lot of our colleagues will look to hire someone and look to just make it kind of really hard for them at the beginning to kind of be like, look, I had to go through this, so you have to go through it too, and it's all part of the learning experience. I didn't realize that was the mindset for.
So I don't think they're making a conscious decision, but if you ask them, hey, how come you haven't done this? How come you haven't made this easier? How come you haven't made a structured career growth path? How come you haven't paid more? How come you haven't changed the hours? They'd say, is that important? And you say, yeah, it's really important. They'd say, well, I never had that. You say, well, the people you're hiring are not you. You are special. So that's it. It's right there, right? It's not that they're trying to design it this way. They just haven't realized that they need to design it this way because they didn't need it for themselves, which is a great compliment to them. But they probably have to shift their thinking in terms of growing the business.
So moving into the conclusion of this paper, I'll just run through a few things here, and Luke, feel free to kind of interrupt, but just to kind of wrap this one up, the conclusion just kind of talks about, the concerns about the ability of fitness professionals to meet complex public needs, which we've touched on, concerns about the support for personal trainers and fitness professionals, support from the medical community, support in terms of ongoing continuous professional development from employers. There's obviously a challenge with credibility, and I guess things like fads don't really make that any easier, do they? If a lot of fads are being used, stuff that's not evidence based. And there's a quote from David Stalker here, which I just wanted to. I know we're running a bit short on time, but I want to ask you this, Luke. The quote goes, "The industry has been caught in the crosshairs of the confluence of health technology, sport, and popular culture. Ours is one of the few sectors able to straddle these mega trends as relevant in grappling the costs of an aging society, as an appealing to new generations demanding everything on individualized terms. We've seen the borders of our sector smashed down, new entrants dominating all spheres. We're seeing new business models and investments in service to meet new demands and expectations. I believe change is coming. We are now moving into an era of data, science, and fact beyond the first generation of the sector where we were doing everything for the first time." That was quite profound. And I just wondered, with that said, what do you think? I mean, this is a big question, I know, but what do you think the future of the fitness industry looks like?
Well, first of all, I think that quote was made in 2016, and it comes from Stalker, like you said, the former CEO of UK Active, and the other author is it says Stalker in Phillips. I don't know what in means, and if Phillips is the name of a journal or what, but I read that and I thought, God, it's like he wrote that in 2021 with the advent of Peloton and changing technologies and disruption, and so the guy is like a prophet, right? He's ahead of his time. So that's my answer to your question, is change is coming, and he's predicting it here. Now, what he specifically says is we are now moving into an era of data, science, and fact. And I'm not sure if that's the case. Like, there's more data for sure. But it's, James Steele, James Fisher will talk to you about, is it just noise? Or is there, actually some truth that we need to be, is there a signal that we should be listening to among all of the noise? And so that's the next challenge.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff.
Now, by the way, that's relevant to this quote. I think, when I listen to your podcast and the people that you have on and the people that we talk about, my goodness, it's pretty easy to look at the evidence out there and the research out there and apply it and move us in the right direction. And how much we know about exercise now relative to 20 years ago, it's just absolutely unbelievable. From the year 2000 until now, and I'll go back to even like late 1980s when we were very much pro-exercise. We were pro-exercise in the late 1980s. Our knowledge around the value of exercise and what the broad benefits of exercise are today versus then have really evolved. So I think we're definitely moving in the right direction.
And one of the other bullets I had, and I guess parts of this final conclusion is, just talks about the research that's required into the real world approach, the effectiveness of personal training in the real world, bridging that gap. And of course, that's something that, I know that James Steele and James Fisher have been doing a fair amount of work on, is understanding, efficacy in the real world versus in the lab when it comes to this kind of stuff. And the last thing I just want to talk about was this neoliberal theory, which you talked about briefly earlier in relation to your controversial point about there's a lack of regulation in the business of fitness, and that's a problem. But at the same time, a lot of us would be out of business if we had to be regulated. And the problem with a lack of regulation is too much freedom, going outside of our expertise to become jack of all trades and almost try and become an expert in all of these things, which is probably impossible. And we just simply aren't, and we shouldn't really be giving advice in a lot of those other domains outside of our focus. One thing I didn't really agree with, and maybe I misunderstood it, but I'd love to finish on this, Luke, is it talks about a tension between profit and professionalism. And it said, let me just see if I can quote it here. Let's see.
The fundamental tension that exists within the fitness industry between profit and professionalism, right?
Yeah. And I just don't really agree with that, but go ahead.
Yeah. Between generating profit from sales and establishing standards of professionalism that are actually based on having provided a quality service. I think, Lawrence, you
can have both, right?
Yeah, you can definitely have both. But the reality is, I don't think both are generally happening. I mean, your listeners, everybody in this podcast, they do have both. And they are, if they became more profitable, I would assume that they're becoming more, I'm convinced that they're becoming more profitable while also being very professional. But the industry as a whole is not doing that, right? I mean,
yeah, sure.
The whole is just saying, if we can make more money doing this, we could care less if it's more professional. So I think that is still a significant issue, a massive issue.
Okay, cool. All right. And any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Well, on that particular topic, I would say that I think all of your listeners should leave this conversation saying that I'm on the right side of that debate, right? That I don't have to succumb to the tyranny of the or it doesn't have to be either be professional, do it the right way, or make money. I can make money and be incredibly professional. And if you don't believe that, look at all these other allied healthcare professions that we're talking about, right? The physician that we put on a pedestal is professional and they are making money. I had an employee recently tell me, hey, one of the part of our envisioned future, the vivid description of our envisioned future is we want to become the Mayo Clinic of the fitness industry. Mayo Clinic happens to be located in Minnesota, but it's a world-class hospital system where if you're literally the Dalai Lama, you're ill, you're gonna fly to the Mayo Clinic and get treatment there. I mean, it's where everyone goes for, whatever weird medical case you have. And she talked about, how do we move toward that? And we were talking about a few things. And she said, we got to start working with underserved people, and we have to work with people with weird conditions. And I just asked, well, how would we get paid to do that, right? How would we get paid? And this is a really smart employee, but she just never thought, oh, how would we get paid? And I said, I got news for you. The Mayo Clinic, they're always getting paid. They're always getting paid. The physician, okay, the nurse, the janitor, they've never gone without a paycheck there. So they're doing work that's meaningful work. And by the way, we're calling that professional, but they're still making money. We don't have to choose between the two. And I think that in our industry, if we become more professional, we'll actually make more money. And maybe that is a statement that's biased toward who your listeners are and how they think, but
that's exactly how I think. Yeah.
That's the passion. Yeah, that should be the passion. I think that's the direction that we're all moving.
That's why I had a problem with that final point in the conclusion, which you addressed perfectly. Thank you so much, Luke. Just for those interested, I attempted to put my son down for a nap before this podcast, and I don't think he's napped at all. I can hear him. I've heard my missus struggling with him this whole time. So I just want to say to you, Luke, thank you for pulling me through this podcast, because it probably was clear at times that I was a little bit distracted, but you were just amazing as always, and I really appreciate that.
Well, thanks for having me on, and Merry Christmas to you and to your listeners. It's fun to be with you here a couple of days before Christmas.
Yeah, likewise to you, and Happy New Year. And I'll let you jump off. And for everyone listening, to find the blog post for this episode, please go to highintensitybusiness.com and search for episode 347. And until next time, thank you very much for listening. This episode is brought to you by ARX. You want to be a successful strength training studio owner. The The problem is you aren't able to deliver the safest, most efficient, and effective workouts, making it harder for you to attract and retain clients, which makes you feel frustrated. I understand that it can be difficult to differentiate your business without the right tools. ARX's breakthrough adaptive resistance technology uses patented motorized resistance and computer software to give you and your clients the perfect workout every single time. BioFit founder John Zarbok says that ARX is clearly the superior tool to deliver the exercise stimulus. My clients are seeing insane improvements in weeks, not months. I could not fathom running my business without ARX. So here's how you get started. Number 1, go to arxfit.com/HIB to get $500 off your ARX machines. Number 2, book a call with the ARX sales team. And number 3, learn how ARX can help you grow your strength training business. Go to arxfit.com/HIB so you can stop struggling to attract and retain clients and start to grow your strength training business with confidence.